Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Get More Students podcast. I'm your co-host, Alex Asher, CEO of LearnCube.
And I'm Herbert Gerzer, founder of LURN Media.
Now, we are here to talk about writing a business plan for a language school or a tutoring business. So both of us are approached by businesses all the time in the language space. A lot of them actually new businesses, certainly in LearnCube's phase, and maybe the same with you, Herbert. And a lot of them do feel incredibly generic and same, even when they're starting out or they've been in business a long time and it doesn't feel like they've changed much for a long time. So today we were going to talk about how to write a business plan for those that are starting out wanting to write one, and for those that already have an existing business, to have like a one-pager that helps explain your business to yourself, to your team, and possibly to investors, stakeholders, and others that are kind of around your ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of, especially new business owners, are quite overwhelmed and find the task of writing a business plan quite daunting. They think it has to be 15, 20, 30 pages long and, sentences and paragraphs about weaknesses, threats, and competitors. But really, you just need to get the main ideas on one piece of paper. And also for existing businesses, a great way to reassess your business model.
Agreed. And so we actually have started business at different times. I remember starting one of my first businesses back in 2011, and I found the concept of lean startup and lean canvas very attractive. And we were going to talk about that today because also the reason that I remember it being so attractive is I went to business school and law school, and at university, I remember writing business plans as like part of my project. And it was always this huge, multi-page kind of business plan. And I remember even creating like, oh, I'm going to start this business. And as I say, I did these big business plans. But you can get so busy building these business plans, you actually don't get any work done. And you don't actually test whether the idea that you have is working. And I felt that that's why this was so helpful, because it removed all the excuses for should I start the business and really got on one piece of paper. Does this business make sense? What's your take on this, Herbert? And what's your memory of your founding moments?
I agree. I also went to business school at university. I had to do a lot of business plans. And for my first business, I also wrote a very lengthy business plan, but it kind of fell short. And when I started the digital advertising agency, I had a very rough concept, kind of knew who my target audience was, the problems, the solution, and just got to work reaching out to business owners and to my target audience and getting feedback from them so that I could learn and also adjust my business model based on the data I was getting. So huge fan of the lean startup methodology, MVP methodology. So yeah.
Also, if you're interested in learning a little bit about our backstories, which we do have some failed startups and failed ideas that we have gone through this process with, you can find that in some of our previous Get More Students podcasts. But we're going to just start off by looking at the methodology. And we thought it would be fun to apply that to two different types of business. Two of the most common businesses that we kind of get proposed by. And so I'll bring those up now. And if you're watching the videos that we're going to be putting on YouTube, you'll be able to see what we're talking about as we go. So let me just bring this up. So let's just provide again a bit of backstory, because I want it to be obviously very clear that this is not our own canvas that we're coming up in our own business methodology. This is something that's been tried and tested. For those that don't know, lean startup is something you can Google in and learn a little bit more about. But that methodology is really about, well, I can read it here, is a methodology for developing businesses and products And it really shortens the development cycles and really focuses on learning as fast as possible and getting to an MVP, a minimum viable product or business as soon as possible. And that's kind of, again, going back to your point there, Herbert, is particularly if you're starting a language business, particularly an online language school, you can kind of get really caught up with, is this going to work? Is it not? There's a lot you can learn very, very, very fast. And one of the central aspects that I remember of the methodology is to test your biggest assumptions as early as possible. And one of the most important ones is to make sure that people are willing to pay for your service.
Very true.
I know that a lot, myself included, have previously got, and if you're a big business listening to this might be more about a product that you're wondering whether should we do this or should we not. You can learn very quickly by just putting it out there and seeing if you can get people to pay money for that. And money is a big indicator of somebody's real pain point felt, and also whether or not you're likely to have a viable business in the longer run. Herbert, yeah. And do you want to tell us more about the Lean Canvas itself?
So basically we want to use kind of this method of devising a one-page business plan, and we do have a formula, a structure to this, and we're going to talk about this on how to create a lean canvas for your business, and identifying kind of the main areas what to think about. Excellent.
So this is called the Lean Canvas. So if you're not familiar with it, you can always Google it afterwards and find more about it. But highly recommend using a template like this to get started. Now, we're going to start with two different examples. The first is going to be, actually, Herbert, why don't you tell us about an idea you have in mind?
Sure. We wanted to chat about an in-person language school and how this would apply to a language business like this. And so we decided to take a real-world example and adjust it a little bit so that we're not giving too much information away.
Excellent. And afterwards, we're going to be talking about an online corporate language business. So stay tuned if you're kind of more interested in the online side. But I think learning about this was really great and kind of going through this with you. Now, I'm just going to quickly touch over the aspects that you have on this one page of this Lean Canvas. You have the problem, and I'm going to probably start off with the three main things you need to get right first, which is the problem. 2 would be customer segments, and 3 would be the unique value proposition. The other parts of this canvas is the solution you want to provide, the unfair advantage, and then below that you kind of get more into the details of how are you going to make this work. So just those alone will tell you a lot about the business. Also, channels is another particularly important area. But what are the existing alternatives? Understanding, for example, substitutes or competitors. What are the key metrics? Maybe the high-level concept of like how do you explain it simply what you do? Who are the early adopters? And then at the bottom section of this one-page canvas, really split in two, is what are your costs and what are the revenues or ways you're going to make money. And if you can quickly and clearly explain this, I think you're going to have either the business you have is going to work better, or the new business that you're going to be able to create is going to be a lot more likely to succeed. So, Herbert, let's talk about which of these boxes, because this is a one page with various sort of segments. Where should we start?
Sure. Should we start at the top 3 problems that our target audience is facing?
Let's do it. One thing I would also kind of mention is sometimes when I've looked at how some people approach the canvas, they often start with the problem first. For a lot of products, particularly, I think that's a very good way to start. But for those that are in language education, often they know, this is what I'm kind of good at.
Mm.
I'm going to do some kind of teaching. So they partly know what the solution is. And so I often would maybe suggest starting off with the customer segment as possibly the other way of starting,
Sure.
because then you're kind of really focusing on who you're serving, and then your what are the problems they may face.
Very true, Alex. And we have touched on defining your niche so often in our podcasts and webinars. And again, it especially when it comes to language education, you don't want to cater to everyone. You don't want to offer English courses to anyone who's interested in English because there's just too much competition. You're going to make your life very difficult. So let's start off with the niche. And for this example, our niche is going to be digital nomads and expats who are living in Berlin in Germany. Berlin is a large city and it's very popular for tech companies, and that's why there are quite a few digital nomads and adult expats living there.
Now, again, just to kind of double click on that, we've talked about knowing your niche. Sometimes people are like, yeah, but that's too small. Like, what if I want to grow? Again, it's really important with understanding your target customers, not necessarily what you may be in 5 or 10 years, but what's the target that you're going to start with? So I think we're really clear on that. What are the problems that they may face, Herbert?
When it comes to language, of course, they lack real world German skills, so able to integrate into society, meet new friends. It would be great for these expats and digital nomads to have at least a basic understanding of German. Also, maybe some of the online language courses or online apps or learning software don't really offer an immersive experience. And so they don't get to learn and speak that real world German that they are, wanting to use. And possibly also, a big headache for newcomers into a new city is kind of being alone and meeting new people and extending your network. So that is also a problem that we could also fix with our offer.
Fantastic. So would you go next for I imagine you have to go next maybe either the solution or the unique value proposition, right? I guess you need to know the solution before you provide the UVP.
True. Yeah.
So what did you come up with as 3 kind of key features that you'd have of this in-person niche language school?
Absolutely. So only offering in-person language courses. Again, we want to focus on in-person with native teachers from Berlin or that know Berlin inside and out. So you also get that cultural aspect, you get some tips, you get that insider knowledge of this new city, and also offering social activities outside of the classroom to kind of encourage people to get together and create a community, which again is an excellent selling point.
Right.
For our niche.
And so what's that unique value proposition then? Okay, I can get that in a dozen places, in terms of like a language school can offer me language courses. I can do it a lot of ways. What's unique about the way that this school is going to operate?
Sure. I mean, one way it's difficult, right? Because there are a lot of similar offers and similar schools there. So one way, not necessarily always the best way, is to compete on price. And so, we could offer a lower price and really go for that volume, especially if we have a large premises or a large school and a lot of seats and classrooms to fill up. Our location, where is the school located within the city? Are we smack bang in the middle where all of the tech companies have their offices? That can be a huge advantage. And also the flexibility of the courses. A lot of these types of courses run for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. And so you're really committed to, turning up every week for 2-3 months. So we've decided to offer only monthly courses, so a calendar month. And then it's basically like a monthly subscription. You decide if you want to cancel for a month, skip a month, or continue on for another 2 months.
And it feels like there's maybe not unique, but there's sort of aspect there, which is like it's probably the sweet spot of not being so flexible that you get a whole bunch of really uncommitted people joining, but it also probably gives you enough of a chance to build a relationship with your group. I'm also going to challenge or maybe add two other, maybe either it's going to be a feature or an upsell opportunity, which is if you've got digital nomads, they're probably going to stay, but they're also going to go. Maybe
Exactly.
you could have an online community that you still offer online language classes for those that leave. Because then, it kind of makes sense. If you've got a community that is naturally going to leave because they're digital nomads at one point or they're expats. I've lived in Germany myself for a year, and I didn't feel like I kind of was German from day dot. And I'm sure a lot of people will eventually go back to their own countries. It makes even more sense if you kind of share this kind of digital nomad as an interest that you might be able to build an online community. So there could be some, A, could be a community, could make that quite a unique aspect. And then B, it provides also an interesting revenue stream of online language classes for those that eventually leave Berlin.
Yeah. And so you can extend that customer lifetime value. Great idea, Alex.
We're going to talk about what comes next. We've talked about problem, customer segments, the solution, the UVP, an unfair advantage. Let's talk about the next row of this canvas.
Sure. I mean, of course, your competitors, what do these digital nomads and expats, what other options do they have? And of course, those are other traditional language schools. They could also be online learning solutions, whether it be a school or an app or a course. So yes.
Makes sense. Then you've got key metrics. What are the kind of key metrics that you would say are important for a business like this to measure and to kind of know if they're succeeding?
Absolutely. I mean, customer lifetime value is a big thing. How many in this case, how many months are students staying with us?
Yeah.
And of course, if that's really low, then that would indicate that we have to possibly work on maybe the customer experience, the student experience, the teachers, the customer service. And the higher the lifetime value is, the more a customer is worth. And also that gives you the advantage of being able to spend more to acquire a customer.
Totally right. Also, I imagine if this is digital nomads, and I might be wrong on this, you'd probably understand the segment even better than me, Herbert. But if that moves a lot, that means you probably need enough people at the top of the funnel, right? So your flow would need to be like, for example, if you had people that never left that city, that lifetime value could be their entire lives theoretically.
Sure.
Whereas digital nomads, they're going to be moving around. So
exactly.
Would you think I don't know if website visitors is the right measure, but there's some kind of like leads, like maybe qualified leads is going to be a very important part per week or per month, right? Because otherwise you're going to have a problem in a certain number of months from now.
I would definitely say new website visitors would be very important, again, because you want to keep that pipeline full. And I guess for this type of business, you want to also look at your churn rate.
Totally.
When are these digital nomads dropping off, so to say? And so, I mean, that ties in with lifetime value and knowing how long a person stays with you, so that you can measure, all right, the average person stays for 3 months. Okay, we need a new batch of students kind of coming in every 3 months in order to replace the ones that are going to leave. So that would be a very important metric.
That's also where, online community or online classes that once they leave could be quite helpful because it could extend that lifetime value and reduce the immediate churn.
Sure.
We're going to skip this next part because I think, again, we'd probably need something bit more time to think of something jazzy, but this high level
Mhm.
concept, like being able to explain that really quickly, unless you've got, I mean, do you want to give it a go, Herbert? How would you quickly explain this one?
High level concept. I'm thinking of a slogan or something really really modern for for this on the fly. Um, but again, I'm not going to come up with anything like on
Yeah,
the fly, but it's about knowing the language that
yeah.
your niche speaks and kind of
Uh-huh.
implement and using that type of wording or phrases or
Yeah.
maybe jargon
Hmm.
in the way you present your offer on the website, in social media,
Yeah.
etc.
And you can just see how this all keeps on going back to who's your customer,
Mm,
who's your niche, right? Because it hits your marketing, it hits your high level concepts. All of those things are explainable by who you're serving. And then this goes into probably the area that you know better than anyone, Herbert, which is the channels. What are your paths to market? What are some examples you came up with?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, for this niche, this is a very they're digital natives, right?
Hmm.
They're online all the time on their phones,
Hmm.
on YouTube, and so let's meet them where they are spending
Yeah,
most of the time, which would be Facebook, Instagram ads, Google ads,
yeah,
YouTube ads, but also looking at some maybe other types and other forms of marketing and
mm,
something like partnerships with
yeah.
co-working spaces or gyms or certain cafes or
Hmm.
restaurants that our target audience frequents a lot.
I think it's really clever with partnerships, particularly with a niche
Mm,
in an area. Also, because when you have a partnership with somebody, you're on top of their mind. They're also then your competitor doesn't own that space, right? So if you have
yes.
a partnership with a co-working space that you know a lot of your clientele are going to be going, that means that your competitor also isn't there. It means you can kind of outcompete in that particular watering hole. So
Yep.
sometimes you
True.
also got to think about it not just on how do I get customers, but also how do I create a bit of a moat around
Yep.
my location.
I agree.
We're one of the other ideas and sort of underneath that customer segment is you've got target customers, but your early adopters, and I think that's a really clever and important thing to understand, particularly for new businesses.
Absolutely. What are the patterns and like the similar behaviors that
Yeah.
our first customers have,
Hmm.
and to analyze, get feedback from them. How did you find us? What were you looking for?
Yeah.
Why did you say yes to us and
Yeah.
said no to maybe some alternative solutions? So getting that data through feedback, student interviews
Hmm.
is absolutely crucial. And then you can also refine your messaging as well.
Totally right. And then the bottom part of the canvas, we've kind of talked on the top part. There's the bottom third, which is looking at the cost on the left and the revenue streams on the right.
Sure.
So how are we going to make money, Herbert?
Hopefully through students paying their monthly courses
Right.
and through obviously materials. Maybe you have a markup on there,
Hmm.
a small margin there, possibly also through upsells, whether that be some
Yeah.
extra curricular activities, or private lessons, or things like that.
I think that's really clever, actually. You explained also these social act opportunities could also be easy upsells for improving the lifetime value,
Super.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then the cost structure. What are the most likely costs with this kind of business?
Rent, of course, especially if you have a physical language school, that's going to eat up
Mhm.
quite a bit, which is why, in this case, we're looking for volume,
Yeah.
which is why we're offering a bit of a lower price compared to
Mhm.
our competitors. Teacher costs, of
Yeah.
course, and then marketing.
Yeah, I was thinking marketing is one of of course, the other big one to remember.
Yes.
I think that's also, again, what's the point in having a business plan? It's to be able to also check your main assumptions. What would
Mm-hmm.
you say are the biggest assumptions in this canvas now? What would you, let's say that this was a startup rather than something that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things you would want to know for sure?
Mm. I would want to know if this niche, digital
Hmm.
nomads and expats, would rather uh, come in person
Hmm.
if they have the time to come in person rather than any of the online
Hmm.
solutions. And also, if our solution with the social activities, if that is a draw, if
Yeah,
that's going to convince them to sign up. Because again, there are so many competitors offering basically the same
yeah,
thing. So is that one maybe UVP
yeah.
going to get them over the line?
Great. I thought that was a great experience to go through with you, Herbert. But also on my side, like it's just I think good. I'm already thinking like, oh, I could use that for my business. That's an online business, and I think there's a
Mm.
lot to learn there. Now we're going to go into what would happen with an online language business to see if A gives ourselves a bit of a chance to kind of test out this
Mm-hmm.
canvas, but also to
Sure.
give you more ideas and a way of being able to explore this concept. So lean canvas again. This time we're going to be going for an online corporate language business. We are going to be talking about, let's start off with the top section of the lean canvas. Remembering from left to right, it goes problem, solution, unique value proposition, unfair advantage, and customer segments. However, I usually start with customer segments because when I know who I'm talking about, then I know what their problems are
Mm.
likely to be, particularly when it comes to language education.
Yep.
So for me, with this particular customer group, I'm going to be going after remote software companies, and I'm going to be going after sort of the medium-sized international companies. I'm not, for example, and that kind of gives me the ability to choose. That means I'm not going for those that are highly localized manufacturing companies, for example. I don't need to look at them for my LinkedIn or my marketing channels. I know I'm
Mm-hmm.
going after these software companies. And likewise, I'm not going after the very, very large because in this particular instance, maybe I'm like, I don't know if I have the the manpower and the kind of tender process which is often required for these very, very large
Mm.
companies. I'm going to go for the easier to kind of get a decision
Yep.
from them. So
Smaller,
that's
sorry,
it. So it's going to
shorter
be
sales cycle. Mhm.
the customer segment that we're going to go for in this example. So we were bouncing ideas. Herbert, you probably know what are the standard reasons for companies to invest in their people when it comes to language training.
Definitely upskilling
Hmm.
employees so that they are fit for
Yeah,
the international business.
yeah,
I think that's a huge thing. Maybe the company is investing in different markets or they're
yeah,
expanding, and so their employees need those language skills,
yeah.
but also just employee development and
Hmm.
trying to decrease employee churn.
Yeah,
Professional development is huge. I think those are probably the two main reasons that I've seen for companies.
great. Now we're going to be talking about software companies, which is the niche we decided in this
Mm-hmm.
example. With software companies as well, if you're doing a remote business, you can have people from anywhere. And I think this could give the rise for somebody that's excellent skill wise, but maybe lacks the English skills for their like cohesion and integration in the
Mm-hmm.
company. So, for example, a remote software company might have developers from a country that doesn't, and they don't have very strong English skills, but we want the language to be English. This is a really big pain point because I'm possibly paying less for that particular person. They're living in a low cost country, but I want
Mm-hmm.
to invest so that they're really delivering and really happy about staying with the company. So it could be also about that. That problem is how do I maybe access a new talent pool
Yeah.
but that talent pool doesn't speak the English that I generally would expect to require for that kind of team cohesion. So that's just one example of like how they might be thinking. But I think another trick here is to think not just particularly with companies, you have to think about who is the decision maker.
Mm.
And if you're talking about this remote software company, if they're small companies, it's probably going to be the CEO. they may not have an HR team. And I guess the higher up you go, it's more and more likely there might be a chief people officer or some kind of HR. But again, you can just see how different it is when you know who the niche is, who you go after.
Yeah, very true.
So we've got customer segments. Second thing, we've understood their problems. We're going to go next on to the solution. So in this particular case, we're not going to go too crazy about like what different types of solutions. So let's just say for now, we're going to offer one-on-one online classes for those that really need extra help. We're going to go small group classes for those that have, companies where they actually have lots of people, maybe like a whole team, that team is all of the same kind of language level and they kind of want to improve on that. And we're going to talk about maybe the other features that a company might need, which is better reporting and the ability to really show return on investment could be quite important. And so we're going to use those as the examples. What are some other ways that we could make this solution now have a unique value proposition or something that's quite, we could also talk about unfair advantage, Herbert.
I mean, if we're targeting remote software companies, then definitely a bit of technology added into the mix, whether that be an online platform, possibly a standalone app that students could have something that aligns with your target audience's kind of needs.
I mean, you could also definitely talk about content, right? Because
of course,
I always think, and I'm hearing it a lot more about, when I go to conferences as well as people, if you can combine learning a skill and learning a language at the same time, it's like a double win. And so it might be when your content is, highly relevant to upskilling other skills, not just language at the same time. I think it can really be both unique, and particularly if you're focusing on the niche, which is in this case software companies. You could do that better than, say, anyone that's offering more generic services, say to manufacturing, to airlines, to everything else. It kind of gives you this whole jargon segment that you could even talk to better than anybody else. And maybe also it's the unfair advantages. Maybe it's very founder centric, and that founder is exceptionally dynamic and really resonates with that customer segment. In this case, maybe they really understand the remote team. Maybe they are a remote team themselves, and so can speak to that better than any of their competitors. The fact that it's more niche means that bigger companies are less likely to kind of go into it because there's not enough volume for a very large company. But there's plenty of volume for you. So there's a lot in that kind of unique value proposition and the unfair advantage that you can kind of really dig into when you know your niche.
Great.
So let's talk on the bottom section then, shall we, Herbert? What would you say are the channels for me in this particular remote software companies? How could I go after these companies?
Well, taking into consideration your target audience, which could be CEOs and founders at software companies, possibly even the HR contact people, LinkedIn is probably your best channel, to be honest with you. LinkedIn messaging, maybe even LinkedIn ads, but also probably cold email. Which gets not that much love these days, but cold email can be extremely effective, especially if you're offering something so targeted and so niched.
I think also conferences could be one area. Like there are the good thing is you could go to a software conference and know that everyone there could be a lead. Whereas I think sometimes you can go to conferences and go, oh, where are they going to go? But like a big watering hole for software companies is going to be these big, tech conferences. That probably a lot of them will be decision makers or ways that you can get into companies. So I think there's quite a lot there in terms of conferences. But again, this is just putting it on one page. Hey, how would I go about this business? Let's look about existing alternatives. There are other online language schools. There are other corporate language businesses that theoretically have a whole lot more they can offer, but typically they can't offer that niche what that niche wants. And that's again where I think there's a real win. key metrics in this case, I think, is definitely going to be the number of deals coming in. Like the deal flow is going to be very important. Size of deal is going to be important, like the average size of that deal.
And how much
lifetime value, of course.
Yeah.
But probably, for example, the previous one, you needed like a high volume of customers, whereas you don't need a high volume of customers. You need the qualified leads is going to be an exceptionally important concept. And probably you're going to have some kind of conversation, I think, with these.
Oh, absolutely.
And that'll really, like, no one's just going to buy off the website.
No.
So I think you're going to need a certain number of conversations. So again, you can start to see, hey, what are the levers that I need to make sure that we've got a successful business. The high level concept might just simply be, the only language school made for remote software companies. Like, even though that sounds a bit of a mouthful, who else is do we know that owns that particular space? And so there might be a smarter, better way of explaining that in the future. But yeah, a high level concept, that's kind of what we're going after. And then maybe we explain the way that we do it and try and improve that over time. Our early adopters, let's call them, I think they're more likely to be they're going to have enough people for them to be really thinking about investing in their team. So maybe they're like more than 10 employees. Again, the good thing about LinkedIn is you can kind of identify them quite quickly. Also, probably if you go to conferences, most of the time they're kind of expensive. So that kind of also will be a good way of funneling out those like software companies that don't have many people. They're less likely to go with their team. So anyway, there's some kind of ways that you could find tells. And then your cost structure probably going to be salespeople could be a high cost. You're not going to have rent or anything, so it's probably more on actual people, your teachers and marketing maybe, but marketing, it may not actually be the cost there. I think it could be the convincing aspect and the sales kind of relationships that are more expensive there.
I agree. For something like this, I think the founder would need to do a lot of content marketing.
Yeah.
A lot of, especially a lot of video content.
Yeah.
A lot of posting on LinkedIn, and outreach as well. So I think that would be your marketing channel, which is great because it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
But you will need those dollars for sales reps and also for teachers, because this is not going to be your average teacher. You'd have to get quite skilled teachers, and so that's going to be a large cost for you.
Yeah, and maybe part of that UVP is that actually, we have, teachers that are maybe they've also been in software companies themselves, and they understand the space. And again, you can really kind of create some like really clear differences between like, this is the generic corporate training and this is what you get with us. And maybe there's a lot of humor involved. Again, like there's just a lot you can kind of explore, and it gives me a lot of faith that there's still lots of room to grow in the online language teaching space.
I actually think this is a great business idea.
I know. I'm just thinking about it myself.
Because I have not heard of a language business that focuses on remote software companies and leveraging employees from those kind of up and coming markets that are cheaper, software engineers, and upskilling them with language. Very interesting.
Maybe also it shows a partnership opportunity, right? So maybe your partners are actually the HR people in, particularly, let's say remote companies. Maybe the CEO is like, we're going to try, not going to be hiring in London. We're going to be hiring in lower cost countries. Okay. How do they get there? Those employees, if they come through HR recruiters, well, then those HR recruiters can also go, hey, I've got somebody great. Their English isn't quite right, but what if I bundle it with this is still going to cost you a lot less. You're going to get the person you want. The person's then going to get the professional development that they want. You know, there's a great win there. So hey, Herbert, maybe this is the idea.
Yeah. Actually, we might have to stop the recording.
Yeah,
someone will steal the idea.
stop that immediately. And if you are an independent language teacher, just to clarify, this can be exactly the same ideas that you use. So it works for one person business and it works for 100-person business. And I think that's the beauty of this canvas. It has a lot of flexibility. And one thing that you and I were discussing, Herbert, was that even if you've got an existing business, even if it's successful, using this to quickly as a bit of a sanity check is so useful. Because often we get even the way that we report on an annual basis becomes so formulaic that you kind of lose sight of how this all fits together. You kind of get caught up with the fact that it's a 20-page reporting document and everything's in its own little silo. Whereas a one-pager like this just brings it all together and helps really understand what are the things that need to be true in this business to make it successful.
Fantastic. Love it.
Herbert, I think
given me some ideas already.
Herbert, let's leave it there today. So we've really talked today about how do you write a business plan for a language school, and if you're a language tutor as well, this could be just as useful. We've talked about the Lean Canvas as a methodology, but particularly looked at the canvas, the Lean Canvas, as a way of structuring your business and understanding how it works. We've talked about two particular examples. We've talked about an in-person school and we've talked about an online language school. We've talked about the importance of really understanding your customers, the problem, solution, and particularly also the unique value proposition and an unfair advantage. We've talked about how this canvas can be used for you and hopefully giving you some inspiration to put towards your own business.
Fantastic.
So Herbert, we've talked a lot about channels and people might be going, hey, paid advertising is actually the channel I want to go after. How can people learn more about what you do to help language schools and their paid advertising?
Of course, they can check us out on our website at LURNmedia.com. That's LURN Media.
Fantastic. And if you are needing a way of delivering your online language teaching, you can go to LearnCube at www.learncube.com, and you can learn about our virtual classroom, our APIs, or our online language school software. In the meantime, have a good one. And if you want to listen to get more students episodes, you can find that on your favorite podcast platform. And until we see you next time, take care.
Take care. Bye.